All right, let's get started. So I'm really excited about today's webinar, and the reason for that is BioFlex is introducing a new consumer line of personal red light therapy devices. We actually did a launch this past weekend at our masterclass, and the devices were extremely well received. We've put a lot of time and energy and effort over the last several years to introduce this equipment. So really today's webinar is about this launch, about these new devices. I'm not going to be talking a lot in detail about each and every device. I'll be doing that every month. So I will be adding a new webinar. So we'll be having 3 webinars every month. One will specifically be for personal therapy, therapeutic line of devices, and I'll talk about those today. Another will be more along the wellness category of personal red light therapy devices, and I'll talk about those today. And the third one will be, of course, for our professional laser therapy equipment for healthcare professionals. Bit of housekeeping, these webinars are always recorded, then they're edited and they're uploaded onto our website. So if you're not able to watch in entirety or you want to watch it again, they're usually uploaded onto our website within a week or two of the initial broadcast. And also, for those of you who aren't familiar with what we do, we now actually have 2 websites. So I'm going to walk you through that as well. So I'm going to introduce the equipment. The BioFlex Wave is what we're calling them. By the way, if you have any questions, please type them in. I'll definitely get to those at the end of today's seminar, and I see one already, so not to worry. Type in your questions, try and do it in the Q&A box, and I'll get to all those at the very end for sure. I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept of these devices, because some of you who've been watching my webinars, you may feel a little conflicted, and I understand why. But once I explain everything, I think you'll kind of get what we're trying to do with these new devices and the science behind it, because there is a lot of science behind it. And these aren't just your average wellness devices that you see out there that are flooding the marketplace. These have actually been made according to our specifications, and actually they are mostly fully customizable, like all of our equipment on the professional side. So they're very different, in fact, than what you might see out there on social media. I think much superior as well. I'll talk a little bit about our website, and then of course I'll get to your questions and answers. So this new line of devices, some of them you're already familiar with, but most you aren't. So you can see here in these diagrams, you'll see like the personal therapy system. That's what these sort of floating pads are. But then you'll see some other really interesting new equipment. We have wearable technology, we have LED panels, and we have a brand new, what's called mini port home, which is very similar to our professional system for at-home use. So we have lots of different types of equipment, lots of different pricing, which I think you'll be quite pleased with the pricing. I'm not going to get into that. That's not my thing. You can find all about that on the website. But they're made for consumers at home. So clearly the price point is definitely one of the key features of all this equipment. Now, I coined an acronym for this equipment, well, a lot of this equipment, and that acronym is LAYS. So BioFlex LAYS, not like the potato chip, like light activated systemic effects. And I've talked in the past about the systemic effects of photobiomodulation, and where some of these new wave devices, the way that we intend to use them, or we want you to use them, is to achieve more of a systemic effect on the body. So more of a wellness health effect in your whole body. So some of them are used a little bit differently than, say, a therapeutic piece of equipment, and we have some of those as well, where you'd be using that for a specific condition or injury or so forth. Where BioFlex LAYS comes in is that adding photobiomodulation systemically can improve a lot of different things in your body. And I'll walk you through some of these effects as well. So let me explain what this BioFlex lays is, and that's, I actually coined the acronym, but I can't take credit for the actual systemic effects. And really, systemic effects are mediated, excuse me, by photobiomodulation therapy. Here's a paper, and there's quite a few out there that talk about these systemic effects. This particular paper, and I've presented this one before, and essentially what they're showing here is 3 different wounds. So like little cuts in skin. Now these were done in animals. And then some of them they irradiated with light, and some of them they did nothing, placebo, and others they did nothing as well, but they were in the same animal that was treated, that a contralateral wound was treated. So let me explain. Some of the wounds in that animal had 0 light therapy. Others had light therapy directly on a wound. And that same animal that had another wound elsewhere was also observed. So what they found, and we know this now for many years, is that when you irradiate directly a wound that's trying to heal with specific wavelengths, it will heal faster than the control. And you can see here, that's what these top 2 pictures represent. On the left, spontaneous healing, no light therapy. You can see where that is on the timeline. And then the irradiated wound, you can see it's closing and healing much faster. Now, another wound at the bottom that wasn't touched with light, but was in the same animal that had another wound treated with light, that is a non-irradiated contralateral group, you can see that's also healing much faster. This effect is mediated from the irradiated wound via the blood. And that's what I'm talking about for systemic effects, because when light is absorbed by circulating blood, and typically the longer and the more blood that's irradiated, the better, it actually promotes not just healing, but anti-inflammatory effects and other positive effects on the body. And there's a fair amount of research on this. So part of what we're trying to do with this equipment is expose much larger surface areas of light, of the body with light. This is pretty impossible to you doing this with smaller devices. You'll still get a systemic effect, but you'll get a much bigger effect if you can expose, say, your whole torso with light. And that's where the LED panels come in. So another paper, and the reason why I'm doing this is I want to set this up because I want everyone to understand what we're trying to do here with some of the devices. This particular very recent paper looked at the effects of invasive and non-invasive systemic photobiomodulation. So let me explain. Invasive photobiomodulation systemic effects is when you take a needle, a fiber optic needle, and venipuncture it into a vein, and you irradiate the blood directly. Well, that's invasive, and really it's not used that much, mainly because it's invasive and only certain practitioners can do it. You can't do it at home. There's lots of restrictions, right? Non-invasive systemic photobiomodulation is where you have the light either on the skin or off the skin, but enough or more than enough skin and power to create a systemic effect. So this is right from the paper, and this is what they're saying about systemic effects, that systemic photobiomodulation of the blood or over blood vessels has been associated with biostimulating, vasodilating, and anti-inflammatory properties. This treatment modality has been used for modulating inflammatory processes, tissue repair, even things like arteriosclerosis and systemic arterial hypertension. So we've seen some of this research as well. So they're saying that most of the wavelengths that they find for systemic effects are red. And that's because red accumulates very superficially where there's lots of blood. And it actually is contained in that small volume of tissue where there's lots of capillaries and blood flow. And therefore, it's actually quite more effective than near infrared because near infrared is going deeper and spread out a little bit more. So what they found in this paper was that the studies that they reviewed, it was a systematic review, by the way, was that systemic photobiomodulation, either invasively or non-invasively, induced positive effects modulating metabolic conditions and tissue repair. So that brings us to BioFlex Wave. Now, our new website is separate from the professional website. It's called bioflexwave.com. And it's live right now. So if you have a chance to check it out, that would be good. You can see all the stuff that I'm talking about after we finish today. Now, there's 4 categories of devices that are on the new BioFlex Wave platform. There's light panels. We have the Wave Zone and the Wave Zone XL. These are different sizes of panels. And we have therapeutic systems. These we've been selling these now for 4 to 5 years, actually over 5 years now. The Personal System 120, the Personal System 180, and in some countries, the Personal System Arthritis System. And we also have portable devices. We have the Wave Flow, the Wave Nano, and we have a new line of professional systems under BioFlex Wave called the Mini Port. And I'm going to talk about each of these separately. So let's talk a little bit about the Wave LED panels. And I want to preface this by saying I have talked in the past about LED panels using them for therapeutic purposes. And this is where the distinction comes in. I'm not recommending a healthcare professional use LED panels for therapeutic clinical purposes. So in other words, if you have a rotator cuff tear or medial collateral ligament or meniscal injury of the knee, I'm not going to recommend an LED panel to treat that. I'm going to recommend a therapeutic device that touches the skin or is very close to the skin to impart a specific dosage to help that tissue heal. These LED panels are designed differently. These are designed to treat a much larger surface area of skin from a fair distance away. And you might go, well, I thought you said all the light's reflected and so on and so forth. Well, in fact, majority of the light is reflected. Now, when you have enough power, then as it gets to the skin, you lose 65% of it. But if you have enough power and you're the right distance away and you're using the device properly, you'll still have enough energy on the skin, which can be absorbed, especially the red, superficially into the capillaries to create this systemic effect if you're treating long enough. So that's what these panels are designed for. We also have the Wave Zone XL. It's a much larger device, more of a full body LED panel. You may have seen similar ones out there in the marketplace. And where ours are different and substantially different is as follows. First of all, wavelengths. Now, these panels, these 2 panels are using 6 different wavelengths from 610, 630, 660 nanometers. That's the spectrum of red, orange, and near infrared 810 through 850. The power for the XL, that's that large panel, that sits at almost 1,520 watts of power. And when you think about it, I normally talk about milliwatts. So when you're talking about watts or thousands of watts, it's a huge amount of energy. And you have to have this amount of energy because literally, as you are a distance away from the equipment, the light becomes less and less powerful. Now, we've done our own and internal and manufactured measurements of power density. I'll talk a little bit about that today, but I will definitely get into that more when it comes to these webinars over the next few months. One of the very unique features of these LED panels that you won't find on other devices out there is they are fully customizable like our professional equipment. So the near infrared can be pulsed anywhere from continuous waves, so no pulses, all the way up to 10,000 or 9,999 hertz or pulses per second. So you can actually adjust the pulsing. And you might go, well, why is that advantageous? If you've watched my webinars in the past, you understand that pulsing the light is very favorable to allow the body to utilize the energy more efficiently. And I'm not going to get into all the details about that right now, but let's just say that if you can pulse, especially the infrared, your results will be better. You just need to understand when and how to pulse. And I'll be going over that in these webinars. The beam angle is three different types, 30, 60, 90. And that's literally how the light's coming out, whether it's coming out in a very narrow beam or a very much wider beam. The product LEDs have a very long lifespan of 100,000 plus hours. And there's a 3-year warranty, which is quite long for these types of devices. The wave zone is very similar, but of course it's smaller. So it has 64 5-watt LEDs for a total of 320. So it's roughly a third of the output power. This is more of a desktop version and also very similar with respect to customizing features and warranty and so forth. This equipment has been manufactured by an ISO certified manufacturing company to our specifications. And it actually is quite unique in that it has a voice control, so you can control it by asking it what you want it to do. It has built-in specific modes that you can use, whether it's for fitness or muscle recovery. There's even one for weight loss, which is really interesting. And my research into weight loss, and there is research out there, and I will talk a little bit about that, is that when you expose, especially your abdominal region, to red light, it seems to have an effect on lipocytes. And in conjunction with other things you would do for weight loss, then it may be helpful for that overall reduction of lipids in the lipocytes. There's a floor stand that's included, of course, protective eyewear, and it has a touch screen interface. The quality is excellent. It has a durable aluminum case, and these suckers are quite heavy. So they can be mounted on the floor or on the wall. Typically, you can move the smaller one around. That's fairly easy to do, but the large one, and now you can move it around, but it's quite, it's fairly substantial. So typically you'll have it in an area where you work out, or perhaps your bedroom or what have you, because you do need to expose your skin. You shouldn't be using the devices when you're completely clothed, because that defeats the purpose. A little bit about the power irradiance, that is the power per centimeter squared. And this is an example showing you the power irradiance of the large XL panel. Now you can see that as you get farther and farther away, 10, 20, 30 centimeters away, then the power density starts to reduce. So in future webinars, I'll be talking a little bit about this, because let's say you're 30 centimeters away, how you treat, the length of treatment and or the power will be a little bit different than if you're much closer. All right. So these are all important things to understand, and you need to know that in order to get the optimal dosaging and the systemic effects you're trying to achieve. The next portion of BioFlex Wave are the BioFlex Therapeutics devices. Now, these we've already been selling, like I say, for over 5 years on our BioFlex laser therapy website, and we've shifted these over to our consumer BioFlex Wave site. These are the P120 and P180. These devices are designed to treat medical conditions, right? So these are the ones you'd be using to treat spinal issues, neck pain, epicondylitis at the elbow, golfer's elbow, an ankle sprain, arthritis, those kinds of things. It's not to say that panels won't help to some degree, but if you want direct photobiomodulation deeper into the tissues, having a device that touches the skin is advantageous. So you can see here where we're starting to have a bit of mix of devices. And an important thing to understand here is that you might say, well, which should I get? Well, it depends what you want to do. Typically, most people are going to have two devices. They're going to have one that they put on the skin to treat their arthritis or treat their longstanding chronic shoulder problem. And they're going to have typically a panel to help with systemic overall well-being. But we have some other devices I'm going to show you that are pretty cool as well. The next one is the portable wave products. Now we have two right now. This particular one is called the Wave Flow. And again, it's designed more as a tabletop nightstand type of device, used more for falling asleep, using red light for waking up. And there's quite a bit of advantages to having a small dose of light in your eyes upon waking up. It's protective of your eyes for ultraviolet, but also research is being shown that small dosages of light into your eye are protective as well from things like degeneration, macular degeneration, and those types of issues. In fact, we're doing a study right now using our LED professional devices to treat macular degeneration. So that's just one of the sort of ways that the benefits of these types of devices. Now, this particular one, the Flow, has 4 different wavelengths in the red and near infrared, has 60 watts of total power. So it's fairly powerful as well. And by the way, you can adjust the power from 1% to 100%, and you can adjust the pulses of the infrared as well. It has a battery, so you can charge it up and take it wherever you want to. You can travel with it. Obviously, you can do other things like, charge your iPhone and has a Bluetooth speaker, that kind of stuff. But that's not the therapeutic part of it. The therapeutic part of it is, of course, the light. It also has a broad spectrum band of light as well, used for things like seasonal affective disorder or for waking you up in the morning, which is also beneficial. So mimicking the rising sun, for example. Battery life of the Flow is about 120 minutes, and recharging time takes about 30 minutes. It has an intuitive touch screen. It has voice control as well, has different modes. It also has protective goggles if you're going to treat your face, for example, for skin rejuvenation. So this is a type of device where it's nice and portable that you can, for example, help with skin rejuvenation because it's quite easy to get access to skin, even if the device is held a distance away. But again, you need to understand how much dosaging you should be doing. This next portable device actually is probably one of my most favorite, and it's called the Nano. So Nano is actually a wearable device, and it's designed to actually be therapeutic. And it will create some systemic effect, but the surface area is much smaller, and it's designed to treat very specific areas of your body using red and near infrared light. So it has controlled by a battery, right? So you charge it up, and it takes about, 15, 20 minutes to charge it up. And then you can adhere it to your skin 2 ways. One is using self-adhesive sort of tape in a circular fashion. You can see that in the bottom here. You peel one of the stickers off and you apply it to your device, and then you peel the other side off, and then you place it on the area. So for example, if you just have a very small area, say a tennis elbow or a specific area that you want to treat, then you can place it over that area. And it's quite adhesive. It sticks actually on quite well. But there's other ways of adhering it as well. We also have a specialized band that's adjustable as well. Wavelengths are the ones that we know work well, red and near infrared, 660 and 850 nanometers. It's actually a really powerful device. It's a total of 3,000 milliwatts or 3 watts of power. Now, that's pretty much as powerful as our large LED pads. And the reason you might be wondering, well, what's the reason behind all that power? Well, it's not touching the skin. It's maybe about 3 or 4 millimeters off. So you will lose some of the energy due to reflection, but because it's enclosed and because it's attaching to the tissue, you'll impart a significant amount of energy into the tissue. The runtime on these are about 60 minutes and the warranty is 1 year. And there's different modes and way of using it. You can use the red at full power. You can see here the power irradiance level or power density, and you can use the red at half power. And similarly, the infrared at full power, the infrared or near infrared at half power, and then you can use them in combination. So there's 5 different modes: half red, full red power, half near infrared, full infrared, and then a mixture of the two. And in future webinars, I'll talk a little bit more about which mode to use for what types of conditions you're doing. These are also really beneficial for treating small areas of skin issues, whether that's skin rejuvenation, whether that's treating acne, whether that's treating other specific areas of the skin. It works quite well, and especially the red. When you're wanting to treat deeper issues, of course, you'd be using more near infrared. I see you're asking questions, which is awesome. I will definitely be getting to those questions very shortly. And last but not least, and probably the most impressive new device that we've released under the Wave platform, is the BioFlex mini port home therapy system. So this takes our sort of professional system just one notch below. These don't have a class 3B laser. And again, that's because that is a restricted device, but it has the full software capability, and it has significantly more programs and protocols to treat all the different injuries and conditions that you would normally do with other devices. So it's an integrated platform of software. You can choose the specific area that you want to treat. There's 6 different protocols or levels per protocol, you might say, and you would choose that specific condition, and you can treat it using a professional grade flexible LED treatment array, as you can see shown on the device. So this is merely meant as an introduction. And as you all know, I am not on the sales team. I'm a clinician here. I'm the medical director at BioFlex. My role is to educate people about photobiomodulation. And in the coming months, I'll be talking about all these different devices, how to use them, similar how I've been doing it with the personal system, but now I'll be talking a little bit more about these LED panels, the wearable devices, and the new mini port home as well. So hopefully you have a chance to check out the website. I know that you'll get a 10% discount if you sign up to the newsletter if you haven't done so already. So certainly check it out. If you have any questions about these devices, you can reach out to me. I'll give you my email at the end. Our next webinar, or my next webinar, is on laser therapy for stem cell stimulation, and that's July the 27th. So I hope to see you then. And again, if you have any questions that I can't answer here, you can reach me at david@bioflexlaser.com. So a few of the questions that you asked about the masterclass, those of you who couldn't make it, that will be uploaded to our website. It's going to take another week or two to do that. So check in about a week or two, and it should be up on our website. A question about a knee replacement. Can I treat over a scar? Yes, absolutely. And it should help to reduce that scar as well. What is a joule output rating for the Nano? Well, remember, joules is power times seconds. So Mark, to answer your question is, I can't answer that because it depends on how long you use the device for. The longer you use it, the more joules that you're emitting. But you can imagine at 3 watts for example, and that's total, right? So that's red and near infrared. But let's say it's 500 milliwatts. That's 0.5 of a watt. You do it for 10 seconds. That would be 5 joules, for example. It all depends on what setting you have it for and for how long that you're treating for. Question here, I'm wondering how the new systems that provide systemic effects compare with an infrared sauna. I actually get that question asked a lot. So a couple things. Most traditional infrared saunas use wavelengths that are much higher, usually 1,000 to over 1,000 nanometers. And the therapeutic effects of those infrared saunas are designed for heat. And they actually have an effect on something called heat shock proteins. And it systemically helps the body. These heat shock proteins actually help with systemic inflammation in your body, but it does it in a different way. So they're not comparable. They would be synergistic. I mean, if you have the ability to have a good infrared sauna plus these devices, that would be really good. But they're not equivalent. They don't do the same things. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not, but that's as best I can do on that one. Lipocytes and PBMT, huge implications for lipedema. Do you know the specifics about this? Hi, Betsy. Yeah, so with respect to lipedema, here's the thing. I think I've done a webinar on the on PBMT and how it might affect for weight loss, and it has to do with creating small little transient pores in the lipocyte. Now, lipedema, I think, is something a little bit different. Now, I'm not an expert in that, and I can't even remember now. I looked into it before, so I would have to look into that, Betsy. So if you'd like to email me, I can certainly look into that a little bit more for you. As far as protective eyewear for these new devices, these are really powerful. They're not lasers, but the power output is substantial. So even at 10%, they're bright. So I'm going to recommend that you do wear the protective eyewear when using them, because they are so bright. It won't necessarily damage your eyes. Although the near infrared you can't see, so that's always a danger right there. So definitely it would make sense to wear protective eyewear when using these panels, for example, not for the Nano because it's touching the skin. A question about the Nano, can it be set up automatically sequenced from 660 to 850 like your original equipment? No, it's actually touch. You have to touch the interface to set it up what you want to do. So by touching it once, you'll get half red again, I touch it again, full red, then it goes into half infrared, half near infrared, and then a combination of the two. So you'll choose what you want, or you can change it on the fly. These devices are pretty inexpensive. So to put that kind of technology into it, number one, it's challenging, especially for the size of it, but also too, it just ends up costing a lot more and it's not really necessary. What's the difference between the arthritis unit and the P180? The personal system arthritis, particular one, the protocols have been tweaked just a little bit more to target arthritis, although it can be used for other conditions as well. The standard personal systems, now they can obviously treat arthritis, but they have a sort of a broader, wider range of parameters that allows you to use them for other tissues or other areas as well. And that's really the main difference. If your only complaint is arthritis, that's it, then the arthritis system makes sense. But if you have arthritis and other issues, then I would do the P120 or the P180. Thanks, Dylan. You said that BioFlex is simply unmatched. I hope so. With the positive effects of the light on the eyes, does it also work with protection from developing glaucoma? That's a great question, Tammy. I think they're still trying to look at that, but I believe that there might be some protective effects. Now, glaucoma is both I'm not an expert in it. In fact, Dr. Randy Santiago, our clinic research director, is an ophthalmologist. I'd have to ask him, but I believe that it might have some protective effects. To what degree and how much, we don't know yet. Let's see here. What else do we have? Would the Nano be acceptable for accelerating wound healing? Yeah, so it would help for wound healing, but it's a small surface area. So if it's a larger wound, I would suggest you use a larger device, a larger wearable device. But for smaller wounds, it would definitely help with wound healing. Is a Nano continuous wave output, or does it have configurable pulse rates? The Nano doesn't have configurable pulse rates. Again, you get into the whole driver. I'm not an electronics guy, but from what I now understand about this is when you want to pulse this light at different frequencies, it adds a much more complex and more chips that control it. And I think if everyone's aware that, computer chips and these chips that control things are extremely challenging now to get because of the supply chain and the demand and so forth. So we kept it pretty simple to keep the cost down. So as far as the, Liz is asking about what mode to use it, what power for what conditions and all the rest of it. I will be doing webinars on that. There is a manual and there is definitely information on that, but I will be doing a lot more in-depth webinars on that over the next several weeks. Can you customize and create custom treatments with the new mini port system, or is it limited to the protocols that are in the system? The new mini port, the software is not, it's one step down for the professional, and that is you cannot change the pulse rate like you can in the professional ones. But what we did was that we added 6 different levels of parameters that pretty much cover most of the ones that you would do when you're customizing. So there's 6 instead of 4, which is in the personal system. And again, the reason for that is to keep the cost relatively reasonable. As soon as, and I didn't know this, but as soon as you actually add all the ability to customize and pulse, adds a huge amount of extra cost and burden, not to mention regulatory oversight. And so we didn't do that for the mini port home, but we just added extra parameters in there. I think that answers those questions about that. Can you use these personal devices on the brain for headaches? Well, okay. So first of all, for headaches, typically we treat the neck and the suboccipital area. That's where you'd be using these devices for most headaches. With respect to, say, migraines, that kind of thing, some of our personal systems you might be able to place on your forehead or other areas. And I've done some webinars on that, but typically for most headaches, you're going to be treating over the cervical and suboccipital region in the back and the base of the skull. How are these cleaned and disinfected? Well, the panels don't touch anything, so that's not an issue. Anything that touches the skin, they're typically cleaned with a sort of mild disinfectant, that kind of thing. And I have a webinar on how to take care of your devices as well. That's up on our website. Okay. Will the light panel function properly if it is suspended horizontally? Yes. Like if you want to place it instead of vertically, horizontally, it will function normally. Which unit would you recommend for a knee scar? Well, it depends on how big the scar is. If the scar is fairly small, then you can use a Nano for that. If it's a large, extensive scar or any other issues, then I'm going to be recommending a personal system for that. The last device, is that in conjunction with professionals to send home with a patient, or more for consumer to use as a home device that they own? So the mini port home is meant actually for a consumer to purchase and use at home. And this might be in supplementation with the professional treatment they get in a clinical setting where they have lasers, that kind of thing, or to be using strictly at home as well. And that's what they're designed to do. How soon after the knee replacement can I treat the area with a P120? Within 24 to 48 hours, you can treat a surgical procedure, as long as there's no bleeding. Does the adipose tissue make a difference for thicker people? Yeah, so in previous webinars, I talked about the more adipose you have, the more challenge it is to get light deep. Now with the panels, that doesn't matter because you're trying to get circulation just deep to the skin. That's before the adipose tissue or the fat tissue. But if you're trying to treat through fat and get into muscle, that's a different story. That's where you want different devices that touch the skin. Is there any danger or damage that can be caused from using the device too long? Certainly not damage, but effectiveness is important to understand that there's optimal dosaging. And these photobiomodulation works biphasically. Low doses don't really seem to do much, and extremely high dosages out of the window of that's known to be effective may not be actually effective at all, and may actually slow down inflammation. May actually have a detrimental effect, not making the condition worse, but not actually helping it, right? So you need to get the dosage better. So we do recommend, and we'll have recommendations on how often and how much to use these systems. BioFlex 180, the time is programmed. How do you know how long to leave the nano wave on a spot? Great question. There's a webinar for that, and I'll be talking about that over the next few months for sure. These are new to me too. They've been in development for quite a while. I have the answers, but you know, it's just a lot of stuff, right? So I find the format of webinars more useful because then I can explain it more in depth. And they're a good reference for you. It's hard to cram everything in a manual. There's guidance on the manual for sure. What percentage of subjects experience sleep benefits from using stand-up panels specifically? Well, I can't answer that specifically. I can tell you this, is that photobiomodulation systemically seems to have an improvement on sleep patterns. We're currently undergoing a clinical trial to monitor sleep improvement with photobiomodulation. And there is research on this as well. But as far as a percentage, that kind of thing, well, we haven't, there isn't a lot of research clinical trials on that. So for me to say that specifically, it's hard to say. However, I will actually probably do a webinar on sleep improvement and photobiomodulation once I sort through the research and the evidence in our own clinical trial as well. So the Nano comes with 25 self-adhesive tapes, and you can buy a whole batch. They're quite inexpensive. You can buy extras, and there'll also be a flexible band that you can, I think it's on the website, that you can sort of insert the Nano into it, and then the strap is flexible. Where that's advantage is doing intravascular treatment over the wrist or other areas like the elbow, or attaching several together to treat like the knee or what have you. But they're an accessory. I don't know the price of them, but that is not included with the kit. We're trying to keep the price down. I mean, it's all about like literally trying to make these things reasonable once you factor in all the costs that we have too, right? Which systems are laser output and which ones are only LED? Well, so our devices from the very beginning have always been a combination of LEDs and lasers for professionals. And then for consumers, they're only LEDs because class 3B lasers, technically, you should not be able to buy them as a consumer. And if you are buying them, then that's illegal, and you have lots of potential risks there that are not good. So that's why they're LEDs. And by the way, it's called photobiomodulation now, not laser therapy, because you can use different light sources, not just a laser to achieve the effect. Great name. Oh, yeah, I came up with Lays. Thank you very much. Wave, I did not. I think that was Nick, our CEO, but I'll take credit for it. I don't know. Yeah, the Nano would be great for blisters and small skin conditions. Absolutely. That's where those things are super handy to have. I've been using them now. I just find it easier to treat little niggling areas like a trigger point or maybe an area in my elbow or whatever with the Nano. Just slap it on. It sticks on extremely well. You can be typing and doing other things with it, even exercise for the most part, as long as you're not like, smashing it around or whatever. The BioFlex 180 can't be attached to the new home mini port system because they use professional grade different LED arrays. Can one sit on a chair to benefit from the light panel, same as standing in front of it? Yeah, absolutely, as long as you're naked or scantily clad, I'd say, because as soon as you have clothing, light cannot penetrate through that or very minimally. So you do want to be in your undergarment or whatever, shorts or whatever, to expose your legs, your chest, and your face as much as possible. I do recognize that for some people standing for a period of time or whatever. So let's say you're doing something, whatever, or you're on a bike, like an exercise bike at home, and then you could have the panel, put the goggles on, and you could, be doing the red light therapy as you ride, for example. Would the wave help out for fibromyalgia? Oh, that's a great question. I really think it would. In fact, I find with fibro, because it's a systemic condition, that experimenting with lower levels of light, and by the way, you can change the power all the way down to just 1% of output. So for folks with fibro, I think it would be really beneficial, especially in the very low settings, because they're super sensitive. And this would kind of treat more volume of blood, but not as intensely as our professional equipment. Although I've seen good results in professional equipment, but you have to downgrade the dosaging. Would the device seriously help burn skin? Oh, Jeffrey, wow, nice to see you here. I haven't, last I heard, Jeffrey, you were somewhere in a warmer climate. I don't know, it was Honduras or where you are, but shoot me an email, david@bioflexlaser.com. I'd love to hear what you're up to. Yeah, I mean, end of the day, I think for burns and burned skin, I think because it's superficial, it would be beneficial. Does a mini port have buttons or a touch screen? It's a touch screen. And all the new products have a touch screen interface. Question about the Zone XL. Can one sit on a chair? I think I just answered that one. With the Nano shut off automatically, yeah, it shuts off at 20 minutes, but you can turn it off at any given time. That's just a preset time. And I'll talk about the timings and the dosaging in future webinars. Yeah, as far as overdose goes, 20 minutes seems like a long time, but because it's not touching the skin directly, I'm not overly concerned about that. I've oftentimes been treating up to 20 minutes with the Nano on. So yeah, I'm not concerned about overdosing because the dosaging, the window is actually pretty good. When you think about our personal system, most of the timings are around 12, 14, 15 minutes in for one session, one spot. So this is pretty similar to that as well. Psoriasis, yeah, red light therapy in general can help with psoriasis. I'm thinking that I don't know about a device that doesn't touch the skin for psoriasis. And I haven't seen research on it, so I'm not quite sure on like an LED panel. It may possibly help. I know for sure the personal systems or the pads that we have can definitely help psoriasis. We've had some amazing results with psoriasis. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I really do appreciate you joining me today, and have a great day. Hopefully we'll see you soon. Hopefully check out the website, and I look forward to future webinars. Take care, everyone.